Prayer in schools has not been allowed since it was banned by the Supreme Court in 1962. This ruling has since been upheld in several cases. In the late 1970s, looking for a way around these rulings, states began passing 1 minute of silence laws. This brings us to the 1985 Supreme Court ruling in Wallace versus Jaffree, which pitted the plaintiff, Ishmael Jaffree, against the defender of an Alabama law, Governor George Wallace. Governor Wallace served from 1963 to 1967, from 71 to 79, from 1983 to 1987 as governor of Alabama. You may remember him from his notorious attempts to block the court-ordered integration of Alabama schools in the 1960s. In 1978, Alabama passed a law which required students to begin the school day with 1 minute of silent meditation. In 1981, this law was amended to authorize teachers to instruct willing students to pray and unwilling students to meditate or sit quietly. In practice, students were reciting prayers in school and were being led by their teachers, which was the intention of the amendment, according to its author. He was hoping to get more kids to use this time to recite their prayers. Mr. Jaffree, the plaintiff, had 3 children in an elementary school in Mobile County, Alabama. 2 of his kids were in 2nd grade, and his youngest was in kindergarten. He was an agnostic and encouraged his children not to go along with the prayers. The 2 older kids were pretending to pray, and he felt they were being subjected to religious indoctrination. His youngest refused to pray, and he was tormented by his peers because of this. Mr. Jaffree met 3 times with teachers and administrators in the school, asking them to suspend the practice of prayer. Citing the Alabama law, they refused. In 1982, Jaffree sued, naming the Mobile County School Board, various school officials, and 3 teachers in the suit. He challenged the constitutionality of the Alabama law, saying it was enacted to encourage religious activity. In the suit, his lawyer quoted the author of the 1982 amendment, who stated that the law was an effort to return prayer to our schools and should be seen as a step in the right direction. In 1982, Federal District Court Justice Bernard Hand ruled for the defense, which upheld the law. In 1983, Jaffree appealed, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in his favor, voting to overturn the law. In 1985, Governor Wallace appealed this decision to the Supreme Court and was thus named the defendant. The Supreme Court upheld the appellate court's decision. The law was ruled unconstitutional. It was a 6-3 decision. The majority ruled that the Alabama law, as amended, worked as an endorsement of religion within a public school, and therefore violated the separation of church and state. Their focus was on the effect of the amendment, which they said treated prayer as the preferred action. Justice Rehnquist wrote the dissent. He believed that the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment only prohibits Congress from naming a state religion and has nothing to do with prayer in schools. But the majority found the law unconstitutional. However, both majority and minority opinions left the door open for finding that laws that require a minute of silence could be constitutional. In 1985, 25 states had some kind of 1 minute of silence law. At present, 18 still have such laws. In addition, many schools observe a minute of silence following a tragedy, such as the death of a student. A current Virginia law requires students to begin their day with a minute of silence to meditate, pray, or engage in silent activity. This law was ruled constitutional by a federal appellate court in 2001. The Supreme Court refused to review. The law was upheld. When courts consider prayer in schools, they must attempt to balance two imperatives within the First Amendment, which are the first two clauses of the amendment. The first clause, called the Establishment Clause, says, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. But immediately following, the second clause says, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. School prayer has been found unconstitutional because it violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. But courts must balance this with the freedom of religion found in the second clause. The Virginia law was upheld because it was found to be, at most, only a minor and non-intrusive recommendation of religion. Idaho makes no statutory recommendation regarding school prayer. Many districts allow schools to begin the day with 1 minute of silent meditation.